My name is Elena Cross, and I spent years working in silence while a man built his empire on the ruins of my family, but tonight silence will finally have a voice, and it will sound like his last breath. I was born into silence, not the comforting kind that lulls children to sleep but the sharp kind that waits in corners like a predator, and when I became an archivist I thought I had chosen quiet work, yet silence had chosen me long before I understood its weight. My father was a small contractor, honest but naive, and when he signed a deal with Richard Hale, the CEO of Veyron Industries, he believed it was his chance to grow, but a handshake with Hale was never trust, only poison. The contract soured under forged reports and hidden clauses, and when my father refused to play along, Hale crushed him in court with lawyers already bought, judges already persuaded, and reporters already paid to smear his name. He lost his company, his reputation, and slowly his will, until one morning he collapsed, leaving my mother to drown in grief. Within a year she too was gone, and only my brother Daniel and I remained to carry a name that had been twisted into a curse. Daniel tried to fight the curse with endless shifts, trying to pay debts that were never ours, until one night exhaustion blurred his vision and a truck ended him before he reached 25, and I buried him with hands that shook too much to even hold the soil. That day I promised myself one thing: Richard Hale would one day feel the same crushing silence that had devoured my home. But vengeance is not won in rage, it is sharpened in patience, and so I turned to the archives where I worked, surrounding myself with dust and ledgers and secrets that others forgot. Every unsigned contract, every forged signature, every whisper of bribes passed through my hands, and I learned the language of corruption until it sang like scripture, and I stored Hale's sins in a separate ledger of my own, not of prophets but of ghosts. Years passed, but I never stopped, because silence has patience, and in time allies revealed themselves in unexpected places. A secretary forced to forge numbers slipped me fragments, a ruined contractor shared old invoices, and a discarded junior lawyer whispered about bribes he had seen buried. They thought their stories were worthless, but I stitched them into a tapestry of rot, a picture that revealed Hale not as a titan but as a parasite. Still, even with evidence enough to drown him, I did not act, because timing is a blade, and a blade must be sharp. So I watched, letting his empire expand while planting small fractures, an anonymous email here, a leaked whisper there, rumors that tangled with truths until markets twitched and regulators stirred. Hale survived each wave, patching over with arrogance, and I realized destruction alone would not be enough, because I needed him broken, not just beaten. So I began to study him, not his company but him, because a fortress is best breached through its keeper. I learned his rituals. Every night he left his office at the same hour, every Thursday he indulged in a private club, and every Sunday he drove alone to the outskirts where his first factory still stood. That place was sacred to him, the origin of his empire, a shrine to his greed disguised as pride, and I chose it as the stage for his reckoning. I went there first, tracing the rust on its walls, breathing in the soot still clinging from its early fires, and I felt my father's presence there, as though the ghosts themselves wanted justice. The night came on a Sunday, cold and heavy, when Hale's car rolled into the yard as it always did, headlights sweeping over broken windows like blind eyes. He entered the factory with the arrogance of a man who thought the world still belonged to him, and I stepped from the shadows, my name spilling into the air like a verdict already written. He did not recognize me at first, only the steel in my gaze, but when I spoke my name, Elena Cross, something flickered in his memory, a faint recollection of a contractor's daughter he had destroyed without thought. His smile cracked, and he tried to wave it off, tried to call me bitter, but I laid my ledger before him, a chronicle of his sins, every page inked in evidence. He flipped through the papers with shaking hands, each page a nail in his coffin, and for the first time I saw fear in Richard Hale's eyes, pure and unfiltered. He begged not for forgiveness but for survival, his words spilling like counterfeit coins, but silence has no mercy once it decides to speak. I told him of my father, of my mother, of Daniel, of the silence that had filled every room of my home until even air seemed poisonous, and I told him tonight that silence would end with his breath. He called me unhinged, tried to bargain, but confession had already poured from his face, and fear was the clearest admission of guilt. From my coat I drew the blade, cold and real, because some debts cannot be paid with justice or money but only with blood, and he stumbled back, his arrogance collapsing faster than his empire. I struck once, clean and final, the way silence becomes thunder when it finally breaks, and his body fell to the ground, his blood soaking into the floorboards of the factory that had birthed his empire. I watched not with joy but with calm, because vengeance does not bring celebration, only balance. As his last breath rattled out, I whispered that the archive always remembers, and memory always demands its payment. I left him there, crumpled among the ghosts of his beginnings, his empire already collapsing from the truths I had set free, and I stepped into the night carrying nothing but silence again. Yet this silence felt different, not oppressive but waiting, as though it knew more work lay ahead. Because Hale had never worked alone, and his corruption was not isolated but threaded through networks of power, hidden in offices, contracts, and backroom deals that still thrived. My father's ruin had not been the act of one man but of a system, and though Hale was gone, the machine lived on. So I returned to my archives, not as a worker but as a curator of ghosts, because every signature tells a story, and every missing page hides a weapon. I sharpen my patience like a knife, listening, recording, waiting, because vengeance is not a moment but a legacy. Men like Richard Hale will always rise, but so will I, and when they look into silence again, they will see my face, and they will know the archive remembers.